All right, well, thanks, Doug, for inviting me here today to talk to you all. Um, Earlier, listening to Patty Limerick and looking at the title of my session today, which I didn't make up, it says Saving Rivers for Future Generations. But those two things stirred within me something I think of often. Her catchy little phrase that rolled so eloquently off her tongue, the era of improbable comfort, made possible by a truly astonishing but taken for granted infrastructure. Is that right? Oh, thank you. Believe it or not, I didn't catch that the first time she said it, but I caught her after the session, and she repeated it to me a lot more slowly, so I was able to write it down. But when I said it to her, her eyes brightened, and she had a big grin, and she said, "The movement has begun." So she was pretty excited that somebody actually would use it. But she is right. The era of improbable comfort made possible by a truly astonishing but taken for granted infrastructure. I grew up on a ranch which used water from the North Sterling. I went to school at CSU. I got my degree in engineering, and now I manage the North Sterling Irrigation District, and I've done that for the last 26 years. But when I started looking into the history of the North Sterling Irrigation District, and I found out that my great-uncle was one of the founders of the North Sterling Irrigation District, and he was also on the first board of directors. And I didn't know that. That piece of history was lost. But he was responsible for our truly astonishing infrastructure, which I, for so long, and so many others, have taken for granted. And now I comfortably use it. But we have the same opportunity today to create some truly astonishing infrastructure. And that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about today. So, first of all, I want you to keep in mind that this is on the South Platte River. It's not in place of anything else that's going on. This is in addition to. We're trying to meet a water supply gap. And so this is in addition to. It's not in place of all these good things that we have going. The Northern Integrated Supply Project, the Windy Gap Firming Project, the Chatfield reallocation, the Gross Reservoir enlargement, the Halligan and Seaman expansions, and so many more. It is in addition to, and it's all started, I'll tell you a little bit of a story. It all started about 3 years ago. We were in the South Platte Basin Roundtable, and we were finalizing our basin implementation plan. And at some conference, maybe it was a Colorado Water Congress conference, I don't remember, but one of our members, Doug Robotham, he was our environmental representative on the South Platte Basin Roundtable, and he tapped me on the shoulder and he said, "Would you be willing to meet with some other people and just discuss more regional ideas for the South Platte River Basin?" And I said, "Well, sure." And I said, "Who are some of the others?" And the others that he asked were Mark Waggy with Denver Water, Joe Stibrich with Aurora Water, Eric Hecox, who was with South Metro, Eric Wilkinson, who's here today with Northern, and Eric brought along Jim Hall because Eric knew he wouldn't have time to do this. And also Sean Cronin with the Left Hand and St. Vrain Water Conservancy District, Joe Frank with the Lower South Platte Water Conservancy District, and myself. And so since that time, we've had 3 people retire. I don't know if there's any coincidence there or not, but they retired, and we've filled in with Denver Water with Bob Peters and Rick Marsachek and Alex Davis and Don Jewell with Aurora and Lisa Darling with South Metro. So we continued on. And so we met a few times. We tried to get together as much as we could. Maybe it was 5 or 6 times the first year. And we had some pretty good ideas. But it became quickly apparent that even though we had these ideas, we needed some help. So just by some of the larger players, Denver, Northern, and Aurora, we were able to fund Carrie Sundin from Wilson Water to come alongside and help us look at water availability, optimization, places where the need is and where the water is down in our area, and how we fit all these pieces together. And it was really good because you had some ag representation down on the lower river, and you had municipal representation, things that normally, when I took this job, I would have never had the opportunity to do. And that was all through the South Platte Basin Roundtables, really, that made this possible. So these things are good, and these talks are good, and collaboration is also good. But we had that generosity from some of the bigger players, and we started to do some work. And we also had, after Carrie Sundin retired, I see a trend coming here, Kara Sobieski from Wilson took over. And we also had some help from Matt Lindbergh with Brown Caldwell and Mike Applegate and his crew at Applegate Group. So we did quite a bit of work. We spent about $250,000 of our own dollars and all of our time to look at some potential projects on the South Platte Basin. But we also knew we didn't have all the answers. We realized, we're still a small part of the South Platte River Basin, even though we're some of the larger water providers. So we wanted to bring others in, and that was always the goal. So we went to our basin roundtables, and we just told them what we had done so far, and that's kind of what I'm going to show you today. So we told them what we had done so far, and we just asked, do you think this is something that we should continue on? And it was overwhelmingly, yes, we think this is good. We should look into it further. So we created a task force with all of us original members, plus some of the other players within the South Platte Basin Roundtable, and even people outside the South Platte Basin Roundtable. So that is kind of where we are today, but I'll just show you a few of the things that we found. There, I figured it out. All right. So this is what we call the South Platte Regional Water Development Concept. So we went through a few iterations. We looked at a single storage facility. We looked at 2 storage facilities. We looked at 3 storage facilities. We haven't looked at a 4th. You'll see up in the upper right-hand corner, there's a small reservoir towards the state line. You have to realize on the South Platte Basin, it is a basin of return flows. So the South Platte Basin, we use it, and we reuse it, and we reuse it. As it goes on down the system. So most of the water available in the South Platte Basin is downstream. So that's why you see storage facilities that are downstream. One of the things to keep in mind is that we did not look at water quality, because whether you dry up ag land down in our area and bring it up to the Front Range, or you do something like this that we're looking at, that water still has to be treated. So whether one way or another, the water needs to be treated. And we understood that. We just didn't take the time to get in depth, although eventually we will. So we have what we came up with were these 3 storage facilities, and then 2 zones where the water would be needed. Up north, there's the I-25 corridor. We call this a hot zone. If you have driven through the Frederick, Firestone, Windsor, Timnath, all that area in there, there's a lot of things going on, a lot of growth in that area. So we looked at providing water in that area and also providing water in the metro area as well. So in order to do that, it became clear that we would need some storage up near the metro area, some storage where the Cache La Poudre comes into the South Platte River. That's the last major tributary that comes into the South Platte River. So that's the Kersey facility. And then further downstream, what Joe Frank and I always tried to introduce is if you want to use alternative transfer methods, if you want to incorporate some ag water in these, you have to include storage further down that actually can be accessed by agriculture. So this is the kind of idea. I'm not going to get real in depth with all of this. I'm just giving you a brief overview, but this is the kind of idea that we were looking at. And so here's some of the results that we found. For a single storage concept, we looked at different supplies of water for both of them. So we have Denver and Aurora and many other metro area providers have reusable effluent. So you have these reusable supplies that are legally reusable effluent that we've been enjoying in agriculture downstream right now, because I always ask people when they go to Denver to flush twice because the South Platte is low. But so we use it right now, but they're legally entitled to reuse that. So we wanted to include that because that's what they're looking at. That's what Prairie Waters Project does, grabs some of that reusable effluent. We also definitely wanted to look at any unappropriated natural flow. So we removed all the IP&Ps that we are looking at, the identified projects and processes, from the water availability in these areas, and we came up with some available water. The problem on the South Platte is that available water sometimes comes in big flushes, and it's difficult to catch. But you can catch some of it, so we looked at that as well, and then we looked at alternative transfer methods, and also some surplus recharge credits. When you recharge down in our area to offset well depletions, those are uncontrolled recharge. You put them into a pond, it moves back to the river. There's engineering calculations to tell you when that's coming back. But when that is coming back, you don't know if the river's going to be on call and whether you need those or not, but those can be tapped into and stored from time to time. And then we also looked at using, kind of as a last resort, continuing to use Denver Basin non-tributary groundwater. So in the first storage, the single facility concept, we looked at, we were able to get 24,600 acre-feet of firm yield out of that single storage concept. Out of a 3 facility, we raised that a lot. And our goal really was 50,000 acre-feet. There's nothing magical about that number. We were just trying to see, can we do it? If you build these, it could be higher than that, just depending on how all of you could work together. And it is definitely a collaborative effort. So we looked at the 3 facility concept, and we reached that without even using Denver Basin aquifer water. So that would boost some of that as well. But we reached that goal of 50,000 acre-feet of firm yield. And some of it's through exchange, some of it's in pipelines, but all of it is looked at as supplying some ag water and some municipal water as well. So we were leveraging all those different kinds. This is what we discovered. Reusable supplies, even reusing the water from this project is important. So those reusable supplies are critical to a firm yield. And as I said earlier, the concentrated water availability is lower in the river. Down below North Sterling, there's only one other reservoir that fills, so there's about 100 miles of river with one reservoir that fills in the wintertime, and so there's some available water down below our river headgate. So those things can be tapped into and used as well. As I said, there could be pumps, pipelines, but some of this can be taken through exchange, and we do need large infrastructure, large capacity inlet canals to capture some of this water. Roughly the storage we looked at were 50,000 acre-feet of around the Denver area, and that could be gravel pit storage, it could be aquifer storage and recovery, it could be several storage vessels. Those triangles didn't mean anything really, but that was about 50,000 acre-feet there, and then about 75,000 acre-feet in the Kersey area and 25,000 acre-feet near the North Sterling diversion. So some of the things that we still need to do is what we're going after now. So we need to develop ideas for organizational framework, and we need to look at M&I and ag demands more closely. So this is almost like part of our second update of our basin implementation plan, at least part of it. And so there's many things to refine and to look at, and that's what we're hoping to do as we go forward. And we went to our basin roundtables because we looked at that we would need some more funding to make this possible. So we just recently went in August to the Metro and South Platte Basin roundtables, and they gave us a letter of support for $77,500 each. And we will couple that with some in-kind and money that's been donated by some of the original founders of what we called, I didn't even announce it, we called it SPROG, the South Platte Opportunities Working Group. South Platte River Opportunities Working Group. So we like catchy acronyms. And then we're going to, hopefully, we're matching that with $120,000 of in-kind, and we're going to request this money as part of the Water Supply Reserve Fund monies at the September CWCB meeting. And so we're asking for $195,000 of statewide so that we can continue on and do this. We will, Joe Frank with the Lower South Platte Water Conservancy District has agreed to be the fiscal agent. So that's what we're continuing on and pushing forward because really the roundtables thought it was a good idea, and we feel almost invested in that as well as being part of this from its inception. So we're kind of at a unique place where we can do a lot of good, I think, and do a lot of, it was all part of our original basin implementation plan. That slide did not work. So anyway, it fits in with our basin implementation plan. It fits in with what we did on the South Platte storage study. It's kind of lockstep with all of those things. And it fits in with the Colorado Water Plan, multi-purpose storage, ATM use, collaboration all over the board, and also we will be looking at environmental and rec use with this concept as well. So we just wanted to bring it to you, and we thank you for the opportunity, and I'll cut it off there because my time is out. Thank you.